Thank you, everybody, for inviting me to this wonderful event. My name is Melanie Jacob, and you're probably wondering what I'm doing here because, like you all, I am not a traditional researcher, although for my work as a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging practitioner, I do a lot of research. So I like to describe myself as an intersectional feminist because I talk about societal issues at the intersection of class, race, and gender. I'm also a member of Lean In Equity and Sustainability. So my work focuses a lot on no poverty goals set by the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, as well as gender equality. So this is where I care a lot about the economic empowerment of women living in the global south, because originally I'm from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia, and I've also had the pleasure of living and working in Barbados, Martinique, Lyon, and now Paris. But before I even start this presentation, I just have to take a moment for me to shout out my fellow Lean sister, Lydia Kwamboka, because it's thanks to her I was able to put this presentation together, as well as the research that I was able to do on, if you're wondering, it's how tech is empowering the lives of Kenyan women. So on today's agenda, I'm going to be first contextualizing gender inequality in Kenya, how the tech industry is empowering Kenyan women, and looking to the future, what can we expect? So as you've probably figured out by now, I do work in tech, even though I work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And thanks to that, I get to the opportunity to work with women from all around the world, including Africa. And now we're seeing that countries like Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, they're becoming well known and very much celebrated in the tech space. And I just wanted to shine a light on that, even though it's not my country of origin, but because I get the opportunity to work with women from across these different nation states. So the first thing we have to think about is the reasons for gender inequality in the first place. And like for many of us from the global south, the reason that we're in the situation that we're in is due to colonialism. And I think a lot of the women who spoke before me, you brought up aspects of this. So it's no secret that in like a colonial and capitalist society, women are being harmed economically, sociolinguistically, socioculturally, and politically, especially in countries that are predominantly Black and Brown. Thus, in society, we see that when it comes to access to different financial resources, women and girls are usually forgotten, overlooked, and sadly, the most harmed. We also know that due to colonialism, ethnic groups living in areas that were heavily colonized are usually, sadly, the ones that have more access to education and financial resources, while those that were not heavily colonized, which was actually a bad thing, are the ones that have least access to these things. And obviously, as I previously stated, women and girls are usually the ones who suffer, no matter if you're in a society that's with a high level of education or in a low level of education. Another issue, reason for gender inequality within the global south and particularly within Kenya is the focus on traditional family values. So in many developing countries, especially in patriarchal societies, men and women do not enjoy legal rights. We know this from a bunch of studies focusing on people who have done colonial work. Many families still believe that it's a man's job to provide financially, whereas women are generally immobile because of greater responsibilities for childcare, household provisioning, doing household chores, and home-based agricultural activities. Needless to say, this affects women's purchasing power as well as their ability to own land and other property, which in turn makes it very complicated for them to seek business loans, home loans, and invest in business ideas and materials. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further down the line in my presentation. There's also the fact that there is unequal access to education. So given the things that I've stated previously, I think it makes sense that obviously the reasons for gender inequality, one of the major reasons would be unequal access to education. So that we know as a society, especially those who've continued our studies, we know that achieving gender equality in education is one of the things that makes it so critical to sustain economic development. And that gender equality in education is also associated with higher economic growth. There are so many studies on this, which I wish I could share with you right now, but I can't. And another thing when it comes to unequal access to education in Kenya specifically is that children of all genders, thankfully, they have access to free primary and secondary school education. However, as in most countries around the world, from the global south to the global north, female and male ratios in Kenyan decision-making institutions are highly skewed against women, and they experience unfavorable enrollment ratios when it comes to secondary and tertiary school. So even though it's mandatory, it has been the case from since 2008, the government has been making a lot of advances in making sure there's access to equal education. We still find, sadly, that a lot of women are not pursuing higher education. In fact, in public universities, the rate is less than 30% as of a study of 2018. And when it comes to STEM courses, it's even lower from 30 and 30, between 30 and 35%. But thankfully, as I stated previously, the Kenyan government, they're putting a lot more programs in place to ensure that we get more women being interested in STEM technology. And the fourth reason, unequal access to earning opportunities. So significant and rising incidence of absolute poverty occurs in Kenya, and women are more likely to be in poverty than men. Why is this the case? Well, for one, just like in so many other countries, Kenyan women are subject to a huge gender pay gap. And the share of income earned by women is much lower than men's share. So when these women actually get an opportunity to get into employment, a lot of the time, because of the gender pay gap, they're not able to earn as much as their male counterparts. So you're probably wondering, like, what makes Kenya so special in the first place? And this is because they're known across the tech world as the Silicon Savannah. So this is also a play on words from, Silicon Valley in the US. And with this basic understanding, we also know that Kenya, the reason they were able to gain that nickname is because within the tech ecosystem there, it's rapidly growing. They're positioning themselves as a hub for innovation. A lot of the companies that I know or have worked with, I know that they're thinking more, or they have opened up tech hubs in Kenya throughout the past few years. So we also know that women, they own 48% of micro, small, and medium businesses, which generate an extraordinary 20% of the country's GDP. So we can see that women, they're being pushed in order to excel, in order to use technology, especially smartphones, in order to start their businesses, to use it for social marketing, social media marketing, in order to promote their businesses, in order to even be able to seek investment. But again, anybody who works in tech knows that women are usually the ones who do not receive a lot of investor funding. So that's an issue in itself. There's also the fact that Kenya, even though there's still some problems with internet access, who doesn't have this if you're not from the global north? There still is, it's faster paced than a lot of other African nation states with the level of Wi-Fi access that you have, especially in the capital city of Nairobi. And moreover, the reason that it's also seen as the Silicon Savannah is because there are a lot of Africans from abroad, who were educated abroad the global north who have made the decision to return home in order for them to open up businesses and invest within the tech sector. So, on that note, we want to focus more on how the tech industry is empowering Kenyan women specifically. And for one is by breaking the cycle of poverty, as well as since we know that women are disproportionately facing financial access barriers, this helps them, prevents them from participating in the economy and improving their lives. So the poverty that these women are facing, they're trying to find ways in order for them to get out of this situation, which is not easy, obviously, but the tech industry is really helping with that. And what exactly is the tech industry doing? So we all know this quote, educate a girl, educate a nation. And thankfully, the way women in Kenya are able to get out of poverty is through education and training, um, which means that they're seeking or they're being offered different forms of tech education in order for them to learn how to code, in order for them to learn how to set up a business, in order for them to learn how to use their phones, as I spoke about earlier, for social media marketing, as well as other things. And thankfully, we've been seeing from recent studies that thanks to this push for tech education and training, the poverty rates are generally declining as the level of education is rising. Therefore, the fact that the tech industry in Kenya is focusing more and more on educating and training women, we know that Kenyan women will continue to have access to quality employment and mentorship programs, and most importantly, a steady income, because we know that's the best way for us to feel liberated as women, no matter what society you're in. You always want to make sure that you're financially secure. And this is what the Kenyan government is focusing on through a number of programs, which I will address later. They're also, thanks to this training and education and focus on the tech industry, we're realizing that a lot more gender stereotypes and biases are being constantly challenged and reduced. It's not perfect, but we're seeing more and more people, men, boys, they're starting to understand the role of a woman, and it's not because of your gender assigned at birth that means you're lesser than in society, even though you come from a society that has traditionally undervalued the presence of women. Now we're seeing a change. We're seeing more and more women coming into positions of power, leading different boards, leading different tech companies. Also, the most important thing for me is the fact that women are confident enough to invest in themselves and their ideas into using technology to address not only Kenya's challenges, but Africa's challenges when it comes to finding out ways for women to use water pumps in order for them to get access to water in the different villages, whether it's through financially aiding women in order for them to seek higher education, in order to improve the tech industry sector within the nation states. So we're seeing a lot more of this going on. And finally, looking to the future. So as researchers, we always want to think about like the research that we've done, what we would like to see, the gaps that are not being fulfilled at the moment. So for me, it would be like placing more of an interest or a focus. I would like to see research and programs that put in place to funding women, funding their ideas, standing behind them, even helping train them in order for them to understand the very important role that they're playing in society and societal development. And we know in a capitalist society, if money is not involved, then it's not seen as important. So that's why we have to make a specific effort in order to push women and fund them and give them the backing that they need. Also, there's a good organization called the Women Enterprise Fund in Kenya, which was established in August of 2007 and launched in 2009 by the government of Kenya, which is helping to like close that gender gap and increase gender equality and empowerment of women. So if we could have more and more programs being pushed in this way, I think that would be a good thing for not only women in Kenya, but in East Africa in general. We also need more support from male allies who recognize that women and men have different needs regarding entrepreneurship support, and that until women's needs are addressed, they are unlikely to be able to start, sustain, or grow their businesses. And then when it comes to potential research interests, I think I would like to see personally more people focusing on the rate of job creation for women in the Kenyan tech industry, as well as, since I'm a Caribbean woman, I would like to see more research on how tech is contributing to women's economic empowerment in other regions, especially in the Caribbean region, and the ethnic disparities in the global south. So we usually just talk about race sometimes, but we forget that in predominantly Black and brown countries, there are different ethnic groups, and sometimes that we see there's discrimination happening, and that's not really being studied a lot because it really does impact people's standing in society and how they're treated. So this is like one thing I'd like to see, especially within the tech industry. And on that note, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you would like to stay in contact, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube, and the title of Melanie Jacob Consulting. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to me today.